right, you guys, let's jump right in. This is the braid pattern that I'm using for my sew-in, and I mostly did straight back braids, but around the edges, you'll see that I swooped them to the side, and that's because my edges are still growing in. So I didn't want to put braids right at the edge, causing more tension. So I just swooped that down, and I'm about to show you the products that I use to do that. It is this Got To Be and this edge holder gel. So yeah, that's what I use. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put my cap on. Then I'm gonna use some Got To Be spray, and I'm gonna only spray right here where I'm planning to put my closure on at. I'm going to get my fan out, where them fans at, and I'm going to dry it a little bit. And then I am going to sew only around the space where I'm going to be sewing the closure on. So you'll see I'm about to make this circle, and that'll all make sense how I'm trying to explain it. But that's what I'm doing. I'm just sewing it around. And I would say one thing you need to remember is you don't have to sew too tight. It's going to be secure, you guys. You don't want to cause a lot of tension on your hair when you're doing sewing styles by sewing too much, and then you get bumps and all that other type of stuff. Like, just don't sew too tight. Know that if you're sewing it in, it is going to be nice and secure. So this is the first thing that you want to do when you're going to be doing like that closure. Do you absolutely have to? No, but I like to do it. It helps bring extra security, and I feel like it gives a nice kind of flawless look at the end. So this is kind of optional, but I think it's a good thing to do. Okay, you guys, and once I've let that Got To Be dry and I'm done sewing it down, I am going to cut off this cap. And so you'll see I'm cutting all the way around until all I have left is that space again that I'm using the cap for with my closure. And it's good if you can get a nice thin cap like this one. I wish this one was a little bit darker, but I'm going to use some spray to fix that up anyway, so it's fine. After that, I'm going in with this netted cap. Now, I am going to sew this netted cap around the perimeter of my whole head. The reason that I like to use this netted cap is because, again, it can allow me to cause less tension on the actual braids where my hair is, and it just builds in an extra layer of security. So you'll see me going all the way around as I sew this down. And then make sure you sew around the perimeter of that cap that you did for where your closure is going to be. And then you're just going to go in and you're going to cut everything off, except, you know, the part that you're leaving for where you're going to be sewing on, of course. Now, the next step you want to do is your closure, and you always want to do your closure first. I'm going to spray some Got To Be just so I can smooth down those baby hairs that came with the closure. I got this closure just from my local hair store. It was only $13.99. Got it on sale. So yeah, sometimes your local hair store will actually have some really good deals on hair. I know a lot of people order hair online, and that's cool too, but sometimes it's worth it to just check out what your local hair store got going on. Right now, I'm just positioning it to see where I'm going to put it. And then I'm using this lace tint spray. I'll have a link in the description for all the different products that I use. You can just get them off of Amazon if you don't want to go down to your local hair store. Sometimes it's easy to just get it right to your door. So I'll have the links for you. I also spray it on the closure itself, and I'm liking how that's matching up. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to sew it down. Now, tips for sewing down your closure. Make sure you have this lined up where you want. My hairline is not super thick up front, so I wanted it to be set back a little bit just so it would look a little more natural for me and where my hairline naturally lies. It's not like a behind the hairline closure, but it's just not, you know, all the way up to the front. And it's also important that you only sew halfway around the closure. Do not sew all the way around the circle. So halfway. And then after you've sewn halfway, you're going to tie your knot and everything with your thread. and then you're going to go back to the front and start on the other side, which you'll see me do in just a second. So now I am pulling it not too tight. You don't want to cause ripples and things, but taut. So I'm pulling it to just make sure it's stretched out completely. And I'm going to start sewing down that anchor. Now I did do mine at a slant, and that's again just how I want it, because of how I wanted my final look to lay. And so if you want, you don't have to do it this way, but this is how I wanted my final look to lay. So this is how I did it. And so I secured it by sewing it to that anchor braid that's there. And you'll see I'm adjusting it to make sure it's not sliding back. A big thing that will occur when you're sewing down your closure, if you're not mindful, is you can start to pull it backwards, like further back than you actually want it. And so you just have to be mindful of that too. So pull it down when you're sewing it on. Don't pull it back and down. I hope that makes sense. Because you just don't want to be pulling your closure further and further back so that it then looks like your hairline is kind of receding, if you know what I mean. So now I'm just going to cut off the rest of this cap, and I'm going to go in with this Wonder Lace Bond. I'm going to spray down a layer of that, and then I'm going to let it kind of dry in between. So I did like 2 layers of this, and I've used this already before, and it's actually not harsh on your edges at all. You apply a little bit of like oil, like grease or something, and it's gonna help it to slide right off. I did not lose any of my edges when I used this last time. And then this is actually just more of that yellow got to be gel, and so I'm going to put that on there, and I'm just going to make a nice little layer. Again, I haven't had issues with this pulling out my hairline. As you know, I'm out here trying to grow it back, so I am very particular and mindful of the products that I'm using. And so I'm going to smooth that out, and then I'm going to let it dry. I want it to get tacky. You see me showing you my bundles that I got from the hair store. You guys, I got, what did I get? 14, 16, 18, and it was only $39.99 for this hair. And it's human hair. Now, is it probably the best human hair in the world? Nope. I can tell you that right now. But it's definitely some nice hair. It hasn't gotten tangly or anything like that. So again, check out your local hair store. Don't be too nervous, okay? And so I use the flip over method. I don't like to cut my tracks. I don't really reuse them, but in the event that I want to reuse them, I don't want to be dealing with no cut up tracks. And so when you're gonna flip it over, it's actually not hard. You'll see me doing it repeatedly, but you just want to make sure it's nice and smooth when you're pulling it over. One of the ways that you can make sure it's as smooth as you want it to be is you're going to pull that, after you flip it over, you're going to pull that track kind of like, not tight, but like just smooth over that flip part, and then sew it down immediately as close as you can. Now I'm going ahead and I am putting this closure down. I know it's a little white. Don't worry about that. It's going to dry. Trust the process. And so I am just putting it down now that it's gotten a little tacky. I am not a huge baby edge type person. I just do the best I can trying to smooth this out the way, but I like to swoop it a little. And now I'm just going in. I've been sewing in some more tracks while I was, off camera, but I'm just flipping back and forth, going around, not cutting any of the tracks until I'm done sewing in what all hair I'm sewing in. And the way that I layer my tracks, so I have that kind of natural layered look without having to cut any, is I do the 18 at the bottom, the 16, and then the 14. And I actually got an extra bundle of 12-inch hair that I used to fill in some of the closure, because the closure just seemed a little thin to me. And so I did sew some tracks in between my closure, and I put an extra little bit of hair on top. So I used probably total about, I used the full 3 bundles of the 18, 16, 14, and then I used about half of the bundle of the additional 12-inch bundle that I got. So Again, because this hair was on sale, the tracks weren't super dense as far as the hair was concerned. It was a regular amount of track hair, but the wefts weren't dense. And so that's why I used as much as I did. But yep, so I'm just continuing to sew here. And then I also doubled the tracks. So I didn't pull the track all the way out into a single. I have the track folded over. And so I'm basically sewing 2 layers of each track at a time. If that didn't make sense, definitely ask me in the comments about it, and I'll see if I can type it out in a way that makes it make more sense. But I'm basically just doubling the track instead of having it all the way stretched out and sewing it in single layers. All right, you guys, and this is the finished look. My makeup is all day long makeup, but yeah, so this is basically how the hair turned out. I'm happy with the density. It's not like crazy full. The curls actually last, and the hair curls really well. If the wind blows, you won't see track immediately, so that's why I like that kind of like swoop look. So it's gonna give me a little grace if the wind hits my face. It doesn't look perfection on camera, but I promise you this closure looks even better. Like in real life, I got so many compliments, and I just put a little bit of concealer where that closure is meeting like my scalp or whatever. But I got tons and tons of compliments. Like it looks really, really good in person. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.